हेलो माय डियर फ्रेंड्स, कैसे हैं आप लोग। उम्मीद करती हूँ आप सब अच्छे होंगे। चैप्टर नंबर 31, द स्वैपिंग ऑफ नाइटमेयर्स फ्रॉम द बुक थीफ रिटन बाय मार्कस यूजैक। Max Winterberg promised that he would never sleep in Liegel's room again. What was he thinking that first night? The very idea of it mortified him. He rationalized that was so bewildered upon his arrival that he allowed such a thing. The basement was the only place for him as far as he was concerned. Forget the cold and the loneliness. He was a Jew, and if there was one place he was destined to exist, it was a basement or any other such hidden venue of survival. I am sorry. He confused Hans and Rosa on the basement steps. For now on, I will stay down here. You will not hear from me. You will not hear from me. I will not take a sound. Hans and Rosa both stepped in the despair of the predicament, made no argument, not even in regard to the cold. They heaved blankets down and topped up the kerosene lamp. Rosa admitted that there would not be much food, to which Max frequently asked her to bring only scraps, and only when they were not wanted by anyone else. Nana, Rosa assured him, you will be fed at best I can. They also took the mattress down from the spare bed in Liegel's room, replacing it with dust sheets, an excellent trade. Downstairs, Hans and Max placed the mattress beneath the steps and built a wall of dust sheets at the side. The sheets were high enough to cover the whole triangular entrance, and if nothing else, they were easily moved in. Max was in dire need of extra air. Papa apologized. It's quite pathetic. I realize that. Better than nothing, Max assured him. Better than I deserve. Thank you. With some well-positioned paint tints, Hans actually conceded that it did simply look like a collection of junk gathered slowly in the corner, out of the way. The one problem was the person needed only to shift a few tins and remove a dust sheet or two to smell out the jail. Let's just hope it's good enough, he said. It has to be. Max crawled in. Again he said it. Thank you. Thank you for Max Vanderberg. Those were the two most pitiful words he could possibly say, reviled only by I am sorry. There was a constant urge to speak, both expressions spurred on by the affliction of guilt. How many times in those few hours of awakeness did he feel like walking out of the basement and leaving the house altogether? It must have been hundreds. Each time, though, it was only a twinge, which made it even worse. He wanted to walk out loud how he wanted to, or at least he wanted to want to, but he knew he wouldn't. It was much the same as the way he left his family in Stuttgart under a veil of fabricated loyalty. To live, living was living. The price was guilt and shame. For his first few days in the basement, Liegel had nothing to do with him. She denied his existence, his rustling hair, his cold, slippery fingers, his tortured presence. Mama and Papa, there was such gravity between them and a lot of failed decision making. They considered whether they would move on. They could move on, but where? No reply. In this situation, they were friendless and paralyzed. There was nowhere else for Max Vanderbilt to go. It was them. Hans and Rosa Haberman Liegel had never seen them look at each other so much or with such solemnity. It was they who took the food down and organized an empty paint tin for Max's excrement. The contents would be disposed of by Hans as prudently as possible. Hopefully, if he received some more painting jobs. Rosa also took him some buckets of hot water to wash himself. The Jew was filthy. Outside, a mountain of cold November air was waiting at the front door each time Liegel left the house. Drizzle came down in spades. Dead leaves were slumped on the road. Soon enough, It was the book thief's turn to visit the basement they made her. She walked tentatively down the steps, knowing that no words were required. The scuffing of her feet was enough to rouse him. In the middle of the basement, she stood and waited, feeling more like she was standing in the center of a great dusky field. The sun was setting behind a crop of harvested drop sheets. When Max came out, he was holding main calf. Upon his arrival, he did offered it back to Hans Huberman, but was told he could keep it. Naturally, Liesel whistled, holding the dinner, couldn't take her eyes off it. It was a book she had seen a few times at the BDM, but it hadn't been read or used directly in their activities. There were occasional references to its greatness, as well as promises that the opportunity to study it would come in later years as they progressed into the more senior Hitler Youth Division. Max, following her attention, also examined the book. Is it? She whispered. There was a queer strand in her voice, planned off and curly in her mouth. The Jew moved his head a little closer. Bitte, excuse me. She handed him the pea soup and returned upstairs, red, rushed, and foolish. It is a good book. She practiced what she did wanted to say in the washroom in the small mirror. The smell of urine was still about her, as Max had just used the paint tin before she did come down. So stank, she thought. What a stink! No one's urines smell as good as your own. The days hopped on. Each night before the descent into sleep, she would hear Mama and Papa in the kitchen discussing what had been done, what they were doing now, and what needed to happen next. All the while, an image of Max hovered next to her. It was always the injured, thankful expression on his face and the swamp-filled eyes. Only once was there an outburst in the kitchen. Papa, I know. His voice was abrasive, but he brought it back to a muffled whisper in a hurry. I have to keep going though, at least a few times a week. I can't be here all the time. We need the money, and if I quit playing there, they will get suspicious. They might wonder why I have stopped. I told them you were sick last week, but now we have to do everything like we always do. Therein lay the problem. Life had altered in the wildest possible way, but it was imperative that they act as if nothing at all had happened. Imagine smiling after a slap in the face, then think of doing it 24 hours a day. That was the business of hiding a Jew. As days turned into weeks, there was now, if nothing else, a beleaguered acceptance of what had transpired. All the results of war, a promise keeper, and one piano accordion. Also, in the space of just over half a year, the Hubermans had lost a son and gained a replacement of epically dangerous proportions. What shocked Liesel most was the change in her mama, whether it was the calculated way in which she divided the food, or the considerable muzzling of her notorious mouth, or even the gentler expression on her cardboard face. One thing was becoming clear, an attribute of Rosa Huberman. She was a good woman for a crisis. Even when the arthritic Helena schemed to cancel the washing and ironing service a month after Max's debut on Himmel Street, she simply sat at the table and brought the bowl towards her. Good soup tonight. The soup was terrible. Nothing morning when Liesel left for school, or on the days she ventured out to play football or complete what was left of the washing round. She would speak quietly to the girl, and remember, Liesel, she would point to her mouth, and that was all. When Liesel nodded, she would say, "Good girl, Somench, now get going." True to Papa's words and even Mama's now, she was a good girl. She kept her mouth shut everywhere she went. The secret was buried deep. She town walked with Rudy like she always did, listening to his jabbering. Sometimes they compared notes from the Hitler Youth divisions. Rudy mentioning for the first time a sadistic young leader named Franz Düster. If Rudy wasn't talking about Düster intense way, he was playing his usual broken record, providing renditions and recreations of the last goal he scored in the Himmel Street football stadium. I know, Leisure will assure him I was there. So what? So I saw it, Sokol. How do I know that? For all I know, you were probably on the ground somewhere, licking up the mud I left behind when I scored. Perhaps it was Judy who kept her sane with the stupidity of his talk, his lemon soaked head, and his cockiness. He seemed to resonate with a kind of confidence that life was still nothing but a joke, an endless succession of football goals, trickery, and a constant repertoire of meaningless chatter. Also, there was the mayor's wife and reading in her husband's library. It was cold in there now, colder with every visit, but still Leisure could not stay away. She will choose a handful of books and read small segments of each until one afternoon she found one she could not put down. It was called the Whistler. She was originally drawn to it because of her sporadic sightings of the Whistler of Himmel Street, Ficus. There was the memory of him bent over his coat and his appearance at the bonfire on the Führer's birthday. The first event in the book was a murder, a stabbing, a Vienna state, not far from the Stephansdom. A small excerpt from the Whistler. Still, she lay there, frightened in a pool of blood, a strange tune singing in her ear. She recalled the life in and out and a smile. As always, the Whistler had a smile as he ran away in a dark and mysterious night. Leisure was unsure whether it was the words or the open window that caused her to tremble. Every time she picked up or delivered from the mayor's house, she read 3 pages and she would, but she could not last forever. Similarly, Max Vanderwerk could not withstand the basement much longer. He didn't complain, he had no right, but he could slowly feel himself deteriorating amongst the cold. As it turned out, his rescue owed himself to some reading and writing and a book called The Shoulder Shrug. Leisure said Hans one night, "Come on." Since Max's arrival, there had been a considerable hiatus in the reading practice of Leisure and her papa. He clearly felt that now was a good time to resume. Now come. He told her, "I don't want to slackering off. Go and get one of your books. How about the shoulder shrug?" The disturbing element in all of this was that when she came back, book in hand, Papa was motioning that she should follow him down to their old workroom, the basement. "But Papa," she tried to tell him, "we can't." "What? Is there a monster down there?" It was early December and the day had been icy. The basement became unfriendlier with each concrete step. "It's too cold, Papa." "That never bothered you before." "Yes, but it was never this cold." When they made their way down, Papa whispered to Max, "Can we borrow the lamplight, please?" With a trepidation, the sheets with trepidation, the sheets and tins moved and the light was passed out. Exchanging hands, looking at the flame, Hans shook his head and followed it with some works. As its jaw was in net. This is crazy, isn't it? Before the hand from within could reposition the sheets, he caught it. "Bring yourself to, please, Max." Slowly, then the drop sheets were dragged aside, and the emaciated body and face of Max Vanderwood appeared. In the moist light, he stood with a magic discomfort. He shivered. Hans touched his arms to bring him closer. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, you cannot stay down here. You will freeze to death." He turned. "Leisure, fill up the tub, not too hot. Make it just like it is when it starts cooling down." Leisure ran up. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph." She heard it again when she reached the hallway. When he was in the pint-sized bath, Leisure listened at the washroom door. Imagine the tepid water turning to steam as it warmed his iceberg body. Mama and Papa were at the climax of debate in the combined bedroom and living room. The quiet voices trapped inside the corridor wall. He will die down there, I promise you. But what if someone sees in? No, no, he only comes up at night. In the day, we leave everything open, nothing to hide. And we use his room rather than the kitchen. Best to keep away from the front door. Silence. Then Mama, all right, yes, you are right. If we gamble on a Jew, said Papa soon after, I will prefer to gamble on a live one. And from that moment, a new routine was born. Each night, fire was lit in Mama and Papa's room, and Max would silently appear. He would sit in the corner, cramped and perplexed, not likely by the kindness of the people, the torment of survival, and overriding all of it, the brilliance of the warmth. With the curtains clamped tight, he would sleep on the floor with a cushion beneath his head as the fire slipped away and turned to ash. In the morning, he would return to the basement, a voiceless human, the Jewish rat, back to his hole. Christmas came and went with the smell of extra danger is expected. Hans Jr. did not come home, both a blessing and an ominous disappointment. But Trudy arrived as usual, and things went smoothly. The qualities of his smoothness, Max remained in the basement. Trudy came and went without any hint of suspicions. It was decided that Trudy, despite her mild demeanor, could not be trusted. We trust only the people we have to, Papa stated, and that is the three of us. There was extra food and the apology of Max that this was not his religion, but a ritual nonetheless. He didn't complain. What grounds did he have? He explained that he was a Jew in upbringing in blood, but also that Jewry was now more than a label, a ruinous piece of the dumbest luck around. It was then that he also took the opportunity to say he was sorry that the Huberman's son had not come home. In response, Papa told him that such things were out of their control. After all, he said, you should know it yourself. A young man is still a boy, and a boy sometimes has a right to be stubborn. They left it at that. For the few first weeks in front of the fire, Max remained wordless. Now that he was having a proper bath once a week, Liesel noticed that his hair was no longer a nest of twigs, but rather a collection of feathers flopping about on his head. Still shy of the stranger, she whispered it to her papa. His hair is like feathers. What? The fire had choked the words. I said, she whispered again, leaning closer. His hair is like feathers. Hans Huberman looked across and nodded his agreement. I am sure he was wishing to have eyes like the girls. He didn't realize that Max had heard every word. Occasionally, he brought the copy of Mein Kampf and read it next to the flames, seething at the content. The third time he brought it, Liesel finally found the courage to ask her question. Is it good? He looked up from the pages, forming his fingers into a fist and then flattening them back out, sweeping away the anger. He smiled at her. He lifted his feathery fringe and dumped it towards his eyes. Is the best book ever. Looking at Papa, then back at the girl. It has saved my life. The girl moved a little and crossed her legs. Quietly, she asked it how. So began a kind of storytelling phase in the living room each night. It was spoken just loud enough to hear. The pieces of a Jewish fist fighter puzzle were assembled before them all. Sometimes there was humor in Max Vanderberg's voice, though it physically was like friction, like a stone being gently rubbed across a large rock. It was deep in places and scratched apart in others, sometimes breaking off altogether. It was the deepest in regret and breaking off at the end of a joke or a statement of self-depreciation. Depreciation. Crucified Christ was the most common reaction to Max Vanderberg's story, usually followed by a question. Questions like how long did you stay in that room? Where is Walter Kugler now? Do you know what happened to your family? Where was the Snorer traveling to? A 10-3 losing record. Why will you keep fighting him? When Liesel looked back on the events of her life, those nights in the living room were some of the clearest memories she had. She could see the burning light on Max's existential face and even taste the human flavor of his words. The course of his survival was related piece by piece, as if we were cutting each part of him and presenting it on a plate. I am so selfish. When he said that, he used his forearm to shield his face, leaving people behind. Coming here, putting all of you in danger. He dropped everything out of him and started pleading with him. Sorrow and desolation were clouded across his face. I am sorry. Do you believe me? I am sorry. I am sorry. I am. His arm touched the fire and he snapped it back. They all watched him silent until Papa stood and walked closer. He sat next to him. Did you burn your elbow? One evening, Hans, Max, and Liesel were sitting in front of the fire. Mama was in the kitchen. Max was reading Mein Kampf again. You know something? Hans said. He leaned towards the fire. Liesel's actually a good little reader herself. Max lowered the book, and she has more in common with you than you might think. Papa checked that Rosa wasn't coming. She likes a good fist fight too. Papa, Liesel at the high end of 11 and still Rick, skinny as she sat against the wall, was devastated. I have never been in the fight. Shh. Papa laughed. He waved at her to keep her voice down and tilted again, this time to the girl. Well, what about the hiding you gave Ludwig Schimmel? Ha! I never. She was caught. Further denial was useless. How did you find out about that? I saw his papa at the Nala. Liesel held her face in her hands. Once uncovered again, she asked the pivotal question, did you tell Mama? Are you kidding? He winked at Max and whispered to the girl, you are still alive, aren't you? That night was also the first time Papa played his accordion at home for months. It lasted half an hour or so until he asked the question of Max. Did you learn? The face in the corner watched the flames. I did. There was a considerable pause until I was 9. At that age, my mother sold the music studio and stopped teaching. She kept only the one instrument that gave up on me not long after. I resisted the learning. I was foolish. No, Papa said, you were a boy. During the nights, both Liesel Meminger and Max Vanderberg could go out about their other similarity. In their separate rooms, they would dream their nightmares and wake up, one with a scream in drowning sheets and other with the gaps of air next to a smoking fire. Sometimes when Liesel was reading with Papa close to 3 o'clock, they would both hear the waking movement of Max. He dreams like you, Papa will say, and no, on one occasion, by the sound of Max's anxiety. Liesel decided to get out of bed. From listening to his history, she had a good idea what he saw in those dreams, if not the exact part of the story that paid him a visit each night. So she made her way quietly down the hallway and into the living and bedroom. Max, the whisper was soft, clouded in the throat of sleep. At first, there was no sound of reply, but he soon sat up and searched the darkness. With Papa still in her bedroom, Liesel sat on the other side of the fireplace to Max. Behind them, Mama loudly slept. She gave the snorer on the train a good run for her money. The fire was nothing now but a funeral of smoke, dead and dying simultaneously. On this particular morning, there were all voices. The swapping of nightmares. The girl, tell me, what do you see when you dream like that? The Jew, I see myself turning round and waving goodbye. The girl, I also have nightmares. The Jew, what do you see? The girl, a train and my dead brother. The Jew, your brother? The girl, he died when I moved here on the way. The girl and the Jew together, ja, yes. It will be nice to say that after this small breakthrough, neither Liesel or Max dreamed their bad visions again. It will be nice but untrue. The nightmares arrived like they always did, much like the best player in the opposition. When you have heard rumors that he might be injured or sick, but there is he, warming up with the rest of them, ready to take the field, or like a timetabled train, arriving at a 90 platform, pulling the memories behind it on a rope, a lot of dragging, a lot of awkward bounces. The only thing that changed was that Liesel told her papa that she should be old enough now to cope on her own with the dreams. For a moment he looked a little hurt, but as always with papa, he gave the right thing to say his best shot. Well, thank God, he halfway grinned. At least now I can get some proper sleep. That chair was killing me. He put his arm around the girl and they walked to the kitchen. As the time progressed, a clear distinction developed between two very different worlds, the world inside 33 Hemel Street and the one that resided and turned outside it. The trick was to keep them apart. In the outside world, Liesel was learning to find some more of its uses. One afternoon, when she was walking home with an empty washing bag, she noticed a newspaper poking out of a garbage bin, the weekly edition of the Molching Express. She lifted it out and took it home, presenting it to Max. I thought, she told him, you might like to do the crossword to pass the time. Max appreciated the gesture, and to justify her bringing it home, he read the paper from cover to cover and showed her the puzzle a few hours later, completed but for one word. Damn that 17 down, he said. In February 1941, for her 12th birthday, Liesel received another used book and she was grateful. It was called The Mud Man and was about a very strange father and son. He hugged her mama and papa while Max stood uncomfortably in the corner. Alice Good's gum guitars stack. He smiled weakly. All the best for your birthday. His hands were in his pockets. I don't know, or else I could have given you something. A blatant lie. He had nothing to give except maybe Mein Kampf, and there was no way he did such a propaganda to a young German girl. That would be like the lamb handing a knife to the butcher. That would be like the lamb handing a knife to the butcher. There was an uncomfortable silence. She had embraced Mama and Papa. Max looked so alone. Liesel swallowed, and she walked over and hugged him. Thanks, Max. At first, he merely stood there, but as she held on to him gradually, his hands rose up and gently pressed into her shoulder blades. Only later would she find out about the helpless expression on Max Vanderberg's face. She would also discover that he resolved at the moment to give her something back. I often imagine him lying awake all that night, pondering what he could possibly offer. As it turned out, the gift was delivered on paper just over a week later. He would bring it to her in the early hours of morning before retreating down and concrete steps to what he now liked to call home. यहाँ पे होता है हमारा चैप्टर नंबर 32 फिनिश 31 फिनिश. मिलेंगे हम नेक्स्ट चैप्टर में विथ 32 पेजेस फ्रॉम द बेसमेंट फ्रॉम द बुक थीफ रिटन बाय मार्कस ड्यूजैक. मेरी रीडिंग कैसी लगी दोस्तों, आप ज़रूर से बताइएगा, और मैं कौन सी नेक्स्ट बुक लूँ या उस टाइप के बुक्स भी आप रिकमेंड ज़रूर करिए. थैंक यू वेरी मच, एंड लाइक शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब माई चैनल. थैंक यू वेरी मच. बाय फॉर नाउ फ्रेंड्स.